love that thing. It's like I'm God.
I know.
I did.
Testing. One. Testing. One.
Hello.
Perfect.
Oh, you can
All right.
hear me?
Oh, did you not hear that?
No. Okay, good.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it was okay. All right. So
Okay,
you sound
cool.
good.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we have 9 more minutes or 12 more minutes. So
Okay,
I'll get
cool.
going.
I will be here. Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you.
to today's webinar, and we're talking about discover which book to write and how to actually finish it. So myself and Kelly Nataris are gonna, hello Kelly, are gonna be with you today for the next hour, and we're gonna share with you like how to select what kind of book to write, how to pick an audience to aim your book for. We'll tell you a little bit what publishers are looking for if you're looking to find a publisher. And then we're going to finish up with how to maybe help you get the book written, to get some writing habits going so that you don't just have this amazing idea that you want to write a book, but you actually finish it. Because we know lots and lots of people want to write the book, but they don't always get it done. And there's over 18,000 people signed up for this webinar, so we know there's a lot of interest in writing the book. So we want to really help. We want to have 17,999 books. We'll let one person not finish. But we want to get you all to get your books written. And for those of you that are really serious about it, we're going to give you a great webinar today. And then starting on Monday at the same exact time, I'm going to be starting a whole master class on how to be a successful author that we'll share with you all as well. So at the end, you're going to have like 10 or 10 hours worth of stuff that can help you in your writing journey. But for those of you today, we're just going to get you started. And for those of you that don't know, my name is Reed Tracy. I'm the CEO of Hay House. I've been working here now for 31 years, over 31 years, just past my 31-year anniversary. And obviously I've worked with all the different Hay House authors to help them get their books completed and done and out there. I used to talk with Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer each day, so I have I always tell everyone I got all their wisdom through osmosis, just being around them all the time. And I'm going to try to share some of what I've learned over the past 31 years with you all to really help you get started on your writing journey. And then my partner here is Kelly Nataris, and she wrote a book for Hay House called The Book You Were Born to Write, which is an amazing book. If nothing else, you should get this book, and it'll just give you something to reference back to over and over during your writing journey. She covers all different parts of your writing in the book, and I'll let her tell a little bit about her background so you know where she's coming from.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So I have been a book editor for 20 years. I started off in some of the bigger publishing companies in New York City, working at HarperCollins and Penguin and Hyperion. And then I made the leap into what I consider to be transformational nonfiction. So the world of self-help, personal growth, inspirational memoir, the books that I actually was reading at the time and enjoying the most. And luckily in that leap, I encountered Reed, and he and I got to be good friends. And over the course of the years, we've done quite a few things together, including the book, and then also some speaking at the Hay House Writers Workshops, and now getting to be here with you and talking to you about the things that you need to know to get started on the process. We both know that there are so many people out there who want to write books and don't actually take that first step. So this is a wonderful place to be, and I want to just start by saying congratulations to you for getting here, because this is a big step in the right direction.
For sure. And for all of you, I know some of you don't have the whole hour to stay with us. Of course, we'd love you to stay the whole time, but we are going to give you access to this for later. So we're going to email it to you. You're going to be able to take a look at it. Write down notes if you don't have everything ready to write down notes now, so that you can use all this information in the future. So it's not going to be a one-time thing. We're going to get it to share with you, and our goal is just to help you along your way. We're not selling you anything other than you have to buy Kelly's book, but if you want. But we're just solely here to help you. It's not, you don't have to worry at the end. We're going to give you a big sales pitch here. It's not coming, so don't worry. It's just going to be all helpful information to get you started. And to get started, what I want to do is just talk about the different kind of books that you can write. Now, we're going to go mostly talk about nonfiction books, and I'm going to have Kelly go through each of the different kinds of nonfiction books that most people that are attending this webinar would want to learn about. But we also know that some of you are thinking of writing fiction books as well. And for the fiction people, it's pretty simple. You get an idea, a story, and it's not simple to write, but you know which area you're going to write in. But for the nonfiction people, there's decisions to be made, and I'm going to let Kelly kind of go through each of the kinds of books. She's going to tell you about like memoirs and teaching memoirs and narrative nonfiction and what about different kinds of self-improvement kind of books and that sort of thing. So why don't you get them started, Kelly?
Of course, yes. So I do now run a company called KN Literary where we help people all the time. And so these are the questions we get. I came up with some of these genres. I don't know if I was the one who originally coined the term teaching memoir, but it was one that I came across that I needed to because so many of my clients wanted to tell their story, but also wanted to offer the lessons that they learned along the way. So that is where I'm going to start because my guess is many of you who are watching this actually are interested in writing what I call a teaching memoir. I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. So this is an example of a book that I worked on recently, or sorry, that the author and I have worked together a bit. Her name is Bridget Fonger. She was published by Canary Press, Superhero of Love. And this is a book where she tells the story of a really terrible breakup that she went through, but she teaches you along the way all the different lessons that she learned. And I love this book for that reason because you feel this affinity for her. You understand her story because you're reading it, and all of us have gone through a terrible breakup, but she really lays out in very clear terms the pathway that breakup allowed her to walk on to become what she calls a superhero of love. So that's an example that Hay House published that I absolutely love. It's just been published, Permission to Put Yourself First by Nancy Levin. So this is a book, all of Nancy's books are what I call teaching memoir. So if you've read Jump and Your Life Will Appear, Worthy, this book, these are books that tell Nancy's story, different pieces of her life, but then they specifically give you step-by-step instruction for how to absorb that learning that she got through her own journey. So again, I highly recommend this for many of you because I'm imagining if you're anything like the clients I work with, and you probably are, you have amazing life stories. You've lived through trauma and triumph. You have had maybe an illness or lost a loved one or had some sort of experience that other people will identify with. And through explaining step by step how you got through it, you're going to help them get through it themselves. So it's a combination of a straightforward nonfiction book and a memoir. So what is a memoir? If you just are talking about straightforward memoir, this is a book I love that was published by Hay House, and it's another one that my company helped with, Danette May, The Rise. So Danette is talking in this book about her life journey, the difficult circumstances that she has walked through over the course of her life, but she's not giving you step-by-step instruction in how to do it yourself. You infer through reading her story what you could do in those same circumstances. So it's a beautifully written memoir. I have several other memoirs here that my company's helped with. This one I love. It's called Spun into Gold by Ramani, and the subtitle is, The Secret Life of a Female Magician, which is one that I love because, you know, how many of us don't want to know about a secret life of a female magician? She has a really interesting story that she's going to give you all the behind the scenes look at what her life has been like. So that's a straightforward memoir. Another one, Happiness on the Blue Dot. This is a story of a woman's journey around the world, talking to people in all different countries all over the world and having really amazing awakenings as a part of it. So this is a straightforward memoir. So if you're not planning to teach someone step by step, that's more of what we call a narrative or straightforward memoir. If you want to give them step-by-step instruction, it's a teaching memoir. Okay, so what about those of you who really aren't writing about your own life story? You're going to have stories in there because every book needs to have stories in it. But you actually are offering some piece of information that you've learned over the course of your life. Maybe you're a coach or you offer some sort of a service. You know, my book is a good example of this, The Book You Were Born to Write. This is not really about me. It's about you and your process of writing a book. So this is considered what I call prescriptive nonfiction. And I have a couple others here. This one is a Hay House book that we helped with called the Crystal Blueprint by Beatrice Singer. And the Crystal Blueprint walks you through how you can use your own blueprint to get more of what you want out of life. And so there's a lot of science in this book. There's a lot of spirituality, but it's not a lot about Beatrice's life. Her life is not the defining moment in the book. It's really about giving you the information she as a scientist has learned over many years. This is considered prescriptive nonfiction, okay? So I'm gonna go over those one more time. Narrative memoir is really just your story. It's probably a tale of trial and triumph. It's maybe something that people will be inspired by. If you wanna write instruction for those people, it's more of a teaching memoir where you're a hybrid teaching them something, but really through your story. Your story is the centerpiece of the book. And then third would be a straightforward prescriptive nonfiction book, which is the self-help, personal growth, the books where you may have stories, I hope again, that you will have stories from clients and other people, but really it is about teaching somebody something that you know that they need to know. So those are the three types of nonfiction that I like to go over. There's also something called narrative nonfiction, which is where you're writing a story. Maybe it's a history book about someone else. It could be a biography, that kind of thing. That's in a separate category as well. But those are the four most common categories of nonfiction. And again, as Reed said, if you're writing a cookbook, you're writing a cookbook. If you're writing a novel, you're writing a novel. Maybe it's a YA novel for young people. Maybe it's a novel in a genre like Westerns or romances. So in that case, you probably know what you're writing, but it can get a little tricky. And I hope that those distinctions help you a little bit that I just went through.
Yeah, and the other kind of book that some of you are thinking of writing are like business-oriented books. And the business books can take two paths as well. Like some people tell about their life running a company or their life in that business, and some people just give you advice on how to run your business. So it's exactly the two distinctions as well for any of you thinking of writing your business books. Now that we started publishing business books, I know there's more business people like paying attention to our different things. So I just wanted to bring that up for you guys as well. And then the next decision that you kind of have to make as you're going along, you're deciding what your right path is, like who you're aiming towards for your audience for your book. And a lot of people think that I'm going to aim to the very biggest audience I possibly can, and I'm going to reach everybody. My book's for everybody in the whole world. And when you say that, you don't realize it, but really you're saying your book's for nobody. And I know it sounds crazy, but this is what I mean, is because you have to have someone to start to read your book to get started. You want to find that niche audience to get started. Eventually, your book might be for more people than just that niche audience, but it's much easier to get started in a niche audience for you. And as an example of that, I brought along today too, is that not everybody is looking to publish a book for millions and millions of people. I know some of the 18,000 people listening right now are thinking of they've been waiting their whole life to write a book that's good for their family and friends, or maybe 300 or 400 people might love the book, but the joy they're going to get from sharing this story with those people is amazing. And we want to help you too and say it's okay for that. Like we're going to talk a little later about how to get a publisher's attention, and this niche audience thing is super important for that as well. But I wanted to tell you a little story about this book, and it's called Love Poems. And it was written by my uncle Rollin Peasley, and the subtitle's A Lifetime of Poems for the Love of My Life. And he wrote poems to his wife, who was my Aunt Bonnie, and he had been writing poems to their whole entire marriage, or even a little before they got married. And they were married for 50 plus years. And my aunt always kept saying, well, we should, make a book and put all your poems in the book and share it with the kids and the other family members, and, just really, get this done, because I love all your poems and I'd just love to share it with more people. Well, unfortunately, my aunt and uncle never got around to writing the book. and last year my aunt passed away from cancer, but that was the motivation that my uncle needed to finally do this book. And I don't want you guys to wait until that happens. I want you to get the book done now. I want you to take the time and get the book written. You can get help to get the book written through Kelly's knliterary.com. You can go there and get help. You can use Balboa Press. That's who my uncle used to get his written. Or you can just get the book written yourself and upload it onto Amazon and get them printed and share them with your friends. Like, you can go to Amazon, you can see this Love Poems book. So if one of his kids want to buy a couple copies and give to a friend, they can easily get them. It's awesome the way that books are so available for everyone today. It's not like he had to print 10,000 and hope he can get them out to everybody. We printed them up 100 copies through Balboa Press so he could give them to his friends and family, and then anyone else who wants them can get them on Amazon. And there have been people that bought them. I know some of my cousins bought some and to read them and give to their friends. But I just wanted to encourage, I know there's a bunch of you thinking like, I don't know if I want to make this a whole business or if I want a publisher. So I really want to encourage you to get that book out there if you have it in you. And just happened to be that I got another book this week. It's called Roaring Playlist of Thoughts, Using Music to Release Your Lioness and Chase Away the Butterflies. And it's by Elisa Davis. And I don't really know Elisa. She came to a writer's workshop that I did in the UK 6 years ago. And she just sent me this book, and she just wrote a little note. Thank you. Words cannot say, without Hay House, this adventure never would have happened. And she wrote me a whole letter about the writer's workshop got her motivated, but it took her 6 years to get the book written. And she knew what to do from the writer's workshop, but it took her a long time to get it done. And she just sent this to me to say, thank you. And I get these like every week or 2 weeks from people that just say, I just want to show you that, you know, what you're doing out there is helping get the books done. Thank you so much. But it's a good feeling that we're helping these people get their books done, Kelly.
Yes, it is.
So now what I want to do is tell you guys a little bit about the niche markets that you're going in. And I brought a few books just to illustrate the point to you. So if you're writing a book like about happiness, that's a huge audience, a huge potential audience. Everyone wants to be happy. But it's hard to reach all those people because you don't have those connections. You can't get the word out unless you have hundreds of thousands of email names or you're on TV all the time. It's hard to reach those people. But if you go into a niche area such as this book, it's a brand new book. It hasn't even come out yet. The Mercury Retrograde book by Yasmin Boland. This is a niche audience. This is an audience of people that are interested in what Mercury retrograde is, how it affects you in your life, what it can do. And so you can target to people that are interested in this area, and it's much easier to get people started reading your book. And then from there, if they like it, they're going to tell their friends. I always say the secret to all successful authors is writing a great book, and everybody laughs at that. But it's really true. Like, you don't understand how true the statement is until you've published 3,000 of them like I have, and see the ones that sell and sell and sell are amazing because people read them and tell their friends, read them and tell their friends. So this is a perfect example of a niche area. Here's another one that another one of our authors did, Megan Watterson, Mary Magdalene Revealed, the First Apostle, her feminist gospel, and the Christianity we haven't tried yet. And it's just talking about Mary Magdalene and the gospel of Mary Magdalene. And it's for a niche audience of people that are going to be interested to read that. And from this niche audience, it's already starting to expand out to women's empowerment people and just an overall empowering book for many women to read. You could say all women could benefit from this book, but it starts out getting those interested in learning a little bit more about Mary Magdalene. And then here's another book we did, What Your Clutter is Trying to Tell You. And again, this is aiming straight to people that have clutter. Lots of people have clutter, but not that many people talk about what it means to you. They say, you know, clean it up, get rid of it, but those are just some examples of types of niches that you can identify in. And I'll let Kelly share a little bit about her experience helping people find their niche market.
Yes. Is that sometimes people will say, well, I'm not sure what my niche market is, but I'll say you actually do know. Your niche market is basically an expansion of the person that you know. You probably love them. They might be a family member, a friend, a client. Someone in your life you love needs the book that you are writing. And that is what I would like you to think about as you're trying to narrow down your audience and your niche, is to think, who in my life do I love, who, if I could sit them down and teach them what I know, their entire life would change for the better. And then using that person, you can start to say, well, what is that person like? What's their gender? What do they like to do in their free time? What are they searching for? What questions are they asking themselves? What is the pain point that they're struggling with? These are all questions that will help you narrow down who the niche audience is for the book. And you can do it by choosing somebody that you love and really looking at them and saying, gosh, this is, you know, if it's my sister, for example, and I would like to write a book that would help her to, you know, have more success in her career. I know how to do that. And maybe you're, you know, it's funny sometimes if it's someone in your family, they're not actually going to be that open to you giving them advice. But if you could sit them down and really teach them what you know, what would you teach them? This is a good way to figure out what the content of the book is as well. What would you teach them first? That goes in chapter 1. What would you teach them second? That goes in chapter 2. Or if you're telling your story, think about yourself sitting around a campfire with this person who you want to inspire, who your story can help through example. And ask yourself, what scene of my story would I tell them first? Where would I start? And then where would I go next? And where would I go next after that? So you would both be figuring out who your audience is and how the book should unfold for them chapter by chapter. So I always say, and it's one of the things that Reed and I both agree on, that start small to go big. Choose one person with the idea that through that person, you are going to reach a larger number of people. If you can get the sort of hot fire of interest burning in that small group, then it can't help but catch fire in a wider way. As Reed said, people will tell their friends about it. So you'll go from, well, this book is specifically for people who want to declutter their houses, but then actually it's for people who want to be happier in their lives. That's a much bigger audience, harder to reach with your book. If you start with clutter and teach the principles that will actually help someone get happier through that process, that book will get handed off from person to person to person, and ultimately you will be reaching your goal.
For sure. And it's one thing I forgot to mention that I'll mention now is down below us, there's a place you can put comments, which we'd love to see your comments, but also you can ask questions there. And there's a few people asking questions. And one of the questions that goes to our previous topic, but I wanted to bring up now, is which is more popular or more in demand, teaching memoir or memoir? I'll let you start with that one.
Yes.
Kelly.
So I will say that on the whole, memoir is a very difficult genre to catch fire in for a couple different reasons. Number one, when people don't know you yet, so if you're not already a celebrity or someone who is an Instagram influencer or a spiritual teacher, then people are less likely to spend their precious reading time on your story. The people who will read your memoir are the people who already know who you are. So everyone actually has an audience already. It just might be small for now. The people who know you do think of you as a celebrity. They are going to want to read your book. So further to Reed's earlier point about publishing the book for your family and your friends and the people that know you, I highly, highly encourage you to do that. If life is asking for you to write your memoir, go for it. Getting a wide audience of people who don't know you to read that is a little harder. if you add in the teaching elements and you focus the marketing of the book toward answering or solving a pain point that a lot of people know that they have, you're going to be in a better shape. So the book I was talking about earlier, where she's telling her story of her painful breakup, and she's teaching you principles of how to be a happier, more whole person, in your own world. As a part of that, she's actually got, a pain point. People have breakups. It is painful. How do you make it through that breakup? She has it marketed that direction. Nothing in the title or subtitle suggests that this is going to be guided by her own personal story. Once you get into the book, you see that. And in fact, it's what draws you in deeper. It's actually very compelling to read about someone else's, pain and how they've overcome it. So it actually works very well in the reading experience, but the marketing is all about you as the reader. And so that's the one benefit that a teaching memoir has over memoir. It's got that benefit oriented. People are asking themselves, why should I buy your book? Why should I read it? And it answers that question right up front, because I'm going to teach you how to solve a problem that you are struggling with.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that helps people that are writing nonfiction over fiction, is because your nonfiction solves a problem, and in fiction, usually it can help in other ways, but usually it's entertainment. And in the publishing world, half the books sold are nonfiction and half the books sold are fiction. But it's a lot harder to get started selling fiction, because they have to read your whole book before they know that they really love it and want it, whereas they can see from your title that your book might help them for nonfiction. So that's just something to think about. And I'm getting notes here from people that are looking at the comments, and I guess there's people here from all over the world, Kelly. There's people from New Delhi, Sweden, Argentina, Finland at 2 o'clock in the morning. They're all staying up late just to see you, see what you have to say.
Yes, well, it's important because I tell you, it's really good information, and to be on this path and putting yourself in the line of fire of good information separates you already. The fact that you're here and gathering this information really sets you up for success. So again, I'll say congratulations and welcome, even at 2 in the morning.
And then another thing that you mentioned about the niche audience, which I wanted to say a little bit more too, is thinking about your niche audience before you write the book, like your ideal client. Like what we do here at Hay House is like we make an avatar for each of the projects we do, whether it be a book, like when we're getting ready to try to tell people about a book and market a book, we try to say this is for someone who believes in crystals and knows that crystals are going to help them, or we try to write out all the characteristics, like a woman 35 and older who has this or that or this, whatever it is. And so we go through and make out our avatar, and we'll give her a name, like this is Jane and this is Jim and this is Henry, or whoever we're aiming for. And there might be 3 different avatars we're aiming for a course or a book or something like that. And that's really helpful to think about that even before you get started on your book. Because then you're really writing the book for these specific people. So when you get ready to start writing, getting people to read your book, they really can resonate to it because you've thought of them before you get started. And in Kelly's book, The Book You Were Born to Write, she gives you a bunch of helpful ways to create detailed outlines to make sure that you're covering all those things in your book itself. So that's another thing that I would recommend strongly to all of you as you're trying to decide which category of book and which niche audience you're trying to reach, is to take the time and really make an outline that really details how you're going to reach those people once you make those decisions. And maybe you can talk a tiny bit about that as well, Kelly.
Yes, well, I'll say that one of the things I love about preparing, I know some people roll their eyes when I say you should write an outline, and I get it. And the thing about writing an outline is that it not just prepares you to make sure every piece of content or every scene, if you're writing a novel or a memoir, gets into the book, but it also sets you up well to write the book. Writing itself is a long haul, right? Writing an entire book takes a long time. Many of us don't have the habits. Reed's going to talk a little bit about habits at the end of this call, but there is a lot that is standing in the way, standing between us actually getting our book written. If you have an outline, one of the major obstacles is out of the way, which is that what I call blank page paralysis. You never sit down and look at the blinking cursor and think, what should I be writing today? Because you already have what I consider to be a list of mini homework assignments in each chapter. As you map out what content you're putting in each chapter, what stories, what different topics you need to cover, what terms you need to define, all of that goes in your outline. And so every day you can sit down and find a place on that outline to begin. It keeps you from sitting down, getting scared, and finding yourself suddenly in front of the refrigerator.
Exactly. And another thing about the niche audience is we did a book called Choose by Ryan Levesque. And in this book, he's talking really about the most important decision you need to do before starting your business, and that's deciding what niche audience you're going to do your business in. And that same approach that he uses in this book can help you when you're deciding about what audience, where you're trying to go with your book itself, because you want a niche audience, but you don't want it so small that there's only 50 people in the world that want to read your book if your goal is to sell lots of books. Now, if you're like my uncle and you're only trying to do it for your family, that's no problem. But if you're trying to reach a little bigger audience or maybe get a publisher interested in your book, you want to pick a niche audience, because we're going to talk about what publishers look for, and publishers love niche audiences. But they want it big enough that they can sell a few thousand books to get things going for the book. But in this book, it's not that big of a book. You can read it all in 2 hours. It's really helpful if you're starting a business or writing a book. But he talks about Google Trends in there, and that's a really, really great resource that's free for every single person in the world to use. And you can go to Google Trends and you can type in topics and ideas that you're considering, and it'll give you an idea of how big the audience is. And in there you can compare it to other audiences. So you can type in specific thing like South Beach diet or keto diet, and it'll show you how many people are interested in that idea. You could type in happiness, you could type in crystals, you could type in meditation, you could type in affirmations, you could type in clutter, you could type in Mary Magdalene, anything, and it'll show you how many people have been interested in that topic, and it'll give you an idea of the potential audience. And in the Choose book, Ryan talks about you don't want the audience too big, just like we've been saying, and you don't want it too small. There's a sweet spot in the middle for a business he's specifically talking about, but that same thing works for books. Like, we use that Google Trends here at Hay House when we're looking at different topics for books or things that might be new and unique that we're not really aware of what the audience might be, or comparing different authors and potential authors that we're thinking about publishing to see, wow, how big is that audience compared to people we're already working with. So that's another great tip for you guys all out there. So I'm going to go to a couple more questions, and then we're going to go to what our publisher's looking for. So, whoops, I just clicked the wrong button. All right. So another question we have from Deborah. She says, what ideas do you have about titles that grab attention? So I'll let you talk about that, because I know you and all your clients are always talking about titles. You got some good stuff for people in their titles, and titles are super, super important. So
they really are. The title it's one of those things where they say you can't tell a book by its cover, but you actually can. And you can really judge a book by its title. Basically, your title needs to telegraph to the reader what benefit they are going to get from reading the book. Now, this could be, if you're writing a memoir or fiction, it could simply be an intriguing title that has some juiciness to it where you're like, ooh, what is that about? And because obviously in that case, you're not giving them benefits in terms of a problem that you're solving for them. But when it comes to either teaching memoir or what I call prescriptive nonfiction. In either of those cases, you absolutely need to think, what benefit is the reader going to see they're going to get in reading this book? So my book is a good example. The book you were born to write, obviously, if you want to write a book, that title is going to tell you, oh, yes, that's it. I want to write the book I was born to write. So it shows you, right, that you're going to get the benefit of what I have to offer. Another one that's good, again, I'm bringing back up this Crystal book, The Crystal Blueprint, Reconnect with Your Authentic Self Through the Ancient Wisdom and Modern Science of Quartz Crystals. So you're giving them the benefit. They are going to learn how to reconnect with their authentic self. Who doesn't want that? And what's really interesting about it is that it's through the science of quartz crystals. That's a very specific audience. That's a niche, right? But there are people out there who love crystals, and that is the perfect book for them. So what I want you to do is think about having that narrowly tailored audience know from reading your title that this book is for them. You want to send out the right message from the beacon at the top of the lighthouse. This book is for you. So if your book is about breakups or relationships or parenting or health and wellness, you want to make sure that all of that is getting clearly communicated through the title and subtitle. And so the last thing I'll say is that a lot of times people come to me and they have a title they are very wedded to. They are just sure this is the right title for their book. And that might be you. You're listening right now. You know, that's you. Keep an open mind, okay? Because if you're working on your own, that may seem like the best title in the world. But once you start getting into relationship with people who books is their business, it's their career, they know a lot more than you do about what has worked in the past. They might know that your title actually once was used on a book that didn't work, and so you'll want to stay away from it. So just keep an open mind. Allow yourself to be educated by the experts when it comes to your title, because most of the time I would say my clients don't actually come to me with a title that I think is in best service of their book and their audience.
Yeah, that titles definitely get helped by experts in the industry. And the other thing that you can do with your title is type it into Amazon, no matter where you are in the world, and it'll come up if other people are using it. Usually, titles you can't copyright or trademark or anything like that unless it's a series. So you could use a title that's already in existence, but you can't really use a title that's in existence that's already super popular because that's just going to not serve you very well. But if someone did a book and it didn't sell very well and you have the same title, that can be okay. And we've done that even here at Hay House. And the other thing I want to talk about titles is that the subtitle is really important as well. Like Kelly was reading you the subtitles, but like you have Kelly's book, The Book You Were Born to Write, but then the subtitle says everything you need to finally get your wisdom onto the page and into the world. So it kind of helps explain what the book's about. And that's really important as well. So you can have a little catchy or different title if the subtitle can help explain it to people. You want people to want to learn more. Like they pick it up, they go, oh, what's Clutter trying to tell me? Uncover the messages and reclaim your life. And then you want them to look further and maybe read the reviews or read the back of the book or anything, or online it catches their attention and they read more and read the reviews. But you want them to take that next step forward with your title. So take some effort in creating the title. I always tell people that if they have an online audience, like if you have people on Facebook, let's say you have 500 people or 1,000 people or some 300 people, whatever the number is, if you tell them like you have a professional page, not just your friends and family, but people that are coming there for a reason, and you say, look, I'm thinking of writing 3 different books, and give them 3 different titles, even though you know it's the same book. Don't tell them, and say, which one would you want me to write? And then people will tell you, and it's amazing sometimes the results you get. Like we've, even here at Hay House, have had people do that on their pages and totally change direction on our title. So it's good to get feedback from people, especially other than people that know you really well, because your mom and cousin and sister are going to say, that's an amazing title. Everything you do is great. And when they read your book, they're going to say it's amazing too. But you need to get feedback from outside your immediate family that can't tell you what they really think. And I'm not saying you don't have an amazing title, but it's good to get feedback from other people. So now we're going to move along to talk about what publishers are looking for from an author to find. So if you get your idea, you figure the kind of book you're going to do, the niche audience you have, and you're deciding, well, should I self-publish? Should I find a publisher? What would a publisher be looking for in the book? One thing I want to say, and this is a thing that I've been doing this for over 10 years now, and over every workshop Kelly and I do, people ask this question: if I self-publish my book, will I be able to find a traditional publisher? And the answer is yes. Like, traditional publishers love self-published books that are successful. So I know there's a lot of you listening, and I'm sure there's thousands of you that have the wrong advice there. So many people still think if they self-publish their book, they can never get it traditionally published. So I want to eliminate that. But also, if you decide, like, look, I want to try to find someone to help me publish this book, it's a whole, like, later in that other How to Be a Successful Author webinar, I'm going to go into self-publishing and traditional publishing and a little bit of the pros and cons of all that. But for here today, we're just going to give you a brief overview of what publishers look for. And some of the things they look for are an engaged audience, so that you have an audience, either like a social media audience or a podcast audience or a email audience, or you give speeches to people. Even if you're giving 10 speeches to 20 people each, publishers care about that. Or you have friends that can help you reach more people. What they're looking for is you being able to help them sell the books. That's really what they're looking for. Publishers want to help you make a great book, do a great cover, do a great title, and they want you to help them sell the book. And that's one of the big myths out there, is that the publisher signs you up for your brilliant idea and they go market your book. But the opposite is true. They sign you up for your good idea and they want you to go market your book. They really want you to help them sell the book. So they're looking for your engaged audience. They want you to have experience in the topic that you're writing about. Like, why should they listen to you? What makes you an expert in that title area? They're going to look at how well you write. They're going to do a book proposal for them, which that's another thing that Kelly and I spend hours talking about at the live writers workshop and in our online writers workshop class. But that we're not going to tell you how to do that here today. But they're going to look at a book proposal, and in that book proposal, you're going to give them a sample chapter, you're going to give them an outline, and they're going to want to see that you're a good writer, not that you're an expert in the area, you have an engaged audience, that you can write, or that you are working with someone that can write. You don't have to do all the writing yourself. It's like Kelly's company, KN Literary, some people they help find writers, some people they edit their material for them, but they help make a better book. And then, and so those are just a few of the things people look at, and I'll let you add a few of the things you know that the publishers are looking for as well, Kelly.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Well, that's obviously, excuse me, one of the most important things that they're looking for. So back when I was an inquiring editor and I sat behind a desk looking at book proposals all day long, the first thing that I wanted to know was, what was the idea? What was what we call hook of the book? The hook being that key idea, the solution to the problem, the thing that makes your book unique. It's usually something that can be communicated in a sentence or two. You might use the sentence stem, I'm writing a book about ... and whatever is in that ... is the hook of your book. And we were looking for a hook that had several different qualities, including something we called high concept, which meant it was very easy to understand. You could really explain it in a sentence or two, because that's about as much time as you're going to get with any potential book buyer, right? It's just a moment. And so you need to be able to really telegraph what your book is about very, very briefly and very quickly. So high concept, narrowly tailored, meaning it knows its audience. It's a niche audience that definitely knows they want this book. that it's magnetic in a certain way. It has some sort of a joie de vivre to it, some sort of a feeling of like, I need to have that book. It sparkles in some way. It's hard. That's the hardest one to really talk about because it's, you know it when you see it, right? But it had that. And then it also was saleable. We knew that there were books out there on the same topic that sold. And so this book was likely to have an audience as well. And then that it was unique. It was something a little different. It was a twist on maybe a topic that has done very well, but there hasn't been a book with this exact twist. So all of that together was what we called a hook. And I wanted a hook that was just, that had zing. And so that's something that I would suggest you all really start thinking about before you start writing your book, if possible. What's the hook? How are you going to explain it in a sentence or two? And does it have those qualities where it's narrowly tailored, it's high concept, it's unique, it's saleable, and it's magnetic? So I'll say that plus the platform is a surefire recipe for getting a publisher's interest.
Right. And by the platform, we mean your direct connection to the audience. So like all the podcast or Facebook or email or give speeches or be on TV or any of those kind of things is your platform. And the publishers are really interested in that because that helps sell the book. One of the questions that people put in the comments underneath is, how big does the audience have to be? And really what the publisher is looking for, like we are looking for at Hay House, is we're hoping that through the niche audience, we can sell 10 or 20,000 books. You know, like we might not sell that many, but we want to have the ability to sell 10 or 20,000 because we know that if we can get 10 or 20,000 people to read it, they'll tell their friends and it'll go from there. If your only potential is to sell 500 books, it's going to be more difficult to find a publisher. I'm not saying you can't self-publish the book, but it'll be much more difficult to find a publisher. And Hay House is like in the top 20 publishers, so our expectations are a little higher. There's plenty of smaller publishers that would be thrilled if they could sell 3,000 of your book or 2,500 of your book or 2,000 of your book. So those are the kind of numbers, like let's say between 2 and 10,000, that most publishers are hoping we can get started with, and then go from there. Like obviously, like if we're publishing Gabrielle Bernstein's book, we know we're going to sell hundreds of thousands, or Dr. Joe Dispenza's book, but it took them a long time to get to that level. Like when they first started going, they didn't sell hundreds of thousands of books initially. That's something you can build on in the future as you build a big audience that is interested in your writing and in your teaching. You can get to that level, but all you need to really get started is those 2 or 3, 5,000 books for a traditional publisher. And the self-publisher, it's up to you. You're going to be making those decisions on your own, so any size is fine for that.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just say one more thing, that it's very feasible these days for anybody to self-publish a book. And I know Reed's going to go into that in his teaching next week, but I just want to say it's not a problem if that's where you're starting. Don't feel discouraged. Self-publishing a book is a great way to get your foot in the door with media, to start building that platform that we're talking about, to start engaging an audience. Books have this magical way of going out into the world farther than you yourself could ever go. So it's actually a wonderful emissary you can send out on behalf of the work that you're putting into the world. So for some people, it's absolutely the right place to start. It's not, again, a discouragement. It's just, where are you on the journey of putting your work into the world and gaining an audience? And if you're at the beginning, then self-publish and the rest will follow. A publisher down the line will be interested in you.
For sure. And again, if any of you have any questions, you can put them in the comments down below. Even if we don't answer all the questions right here, we'll answer some of them in the comments, or I'll go through all the comments and I might talk about them in a future one of the webinars, or Kelly and I do other webinars too. We might use them in there. So please write all your questions down, and some people are giving me some to answer, so we might answer some here. But the more information we have, the better we're able to prepare for the future for you too, because we want you to come away with as many of your answers as you want. And those of you that even aren't watching live, put your comments down below as well, because we're going to go back and keep looking at this. So be sure to do that. Tell us anything you think we should know about you or what you're doing. I guess we have like 150 comments already, so that's awesome. Keep them coming. We love that. And so now we're going to talk about something a little bit different that I've never actually talked about much before. I know Kelly talks about this because she has a whole bunch of people she works with individually, and she's always motivating them to get their books written. But I read this book, and this isn't even a Hay House book. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear, and it's an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. And you can see I have all these markers in there, so I found a lot of brilliance in the book. I love the book. And it's a big best-selling book. It's helping lots and lots of people understand habits and build good habits. But I want to share some of the insights of the book with you to help you build a great writing habit. Because with Balboa Press, which is part of Hay House that we help people self-publish their books, about a lot of the people that sign up for their struggle to get their books written. And I know a lot of people, like my uncle, it took him way too long to get his book written, and we want to help all of you get your books written. And I know Kelly and I were talking before we did this webinar, and she runs into that struggle as well. As people have the idea, she helps them get a great concept, she helps them get the outline, get ready, and then they don't get it written, and it's frustrating, and we want you all to get your books written. So I'm going to share a few of the ideas that I have in here. Now, I have pages and pages and pages of notes, so I could talk about this for hours, but I'm going to share a few of the highlights, and I apologize for looking down at this, but I haven't done this before, so I'm going to share a few of these things. So I love this concept that James said, that is change your identity to be a writer. Every time you write a page, you're a writer. Every time you write a sentence, you're a writer. Every time you write anything, you're a writer. And I want you to start all identifying as writer. As soon as you can finish this webinar, write a line down, write a paragraph down, and then you can be a writer forever. So I want you to start identifying yourself as a writer. And what he says is, new identities are simple. You just have to, basically, it's exactly what I tell people who want to be experts. If you want to be an expert in your topic, you say, I'm an expert in the topic, and you start teaching it. No one is born an expert. No one becomes an expert until they start teaching other people. And if people want to hear what they have to say, then you're an expert. So you need to, if you want to be a writer, you tell everyone, I'm a writer. You say, look, and as soon as you write a sentence, you're a writer. As soon as you write a page, you're a writer. Maybe you have to be an author, you might have to finish the book, but you can be a writer ahead of time. And then you have to prove to yourself that you are a writer by writing. So just small wins like paragraphs, sentences, pages. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, like how to create that habit in a second. But it's just like what I did for Hay House. So 5 years ago, hardly anyone knew who I was at Hay House. I've been working here at that time for 25 years, and I could go to, or maybe it was like 7 years ago, I could go to a live event of Hay House and walk through, and not one person would know who I was. And then I did some interviews for the Hay House World Summit. Now it's called the You Can Heal Your Life Summit. And then I would walk through an event and they go, oh, you're Reed Tracy. I'm like, how do these people know me? And they go, oh, we saw your interviews. I said, okay. And then I started doing a newsletter and publishing it every week. And I just put it out there. And now, I get recognized all over the place. I was just at dinner with friends 3 days ago at a local restaurant, and this lady that's working there comes up and goes, oh, are you Reed Tracy? And I read your newsletter every week. It's amazing. And I'm always shocked when people do it, but I became known just from sending the newsletter out every single week, from doing it every week for years and years and years and years. And I didn't care what people thought of the newsletter. I didn't say, oh my gosh, I'm going to be famous so people will recognize me. I just started sharing the information so people would know who I was, who this person was that was helping run Hay House. And you guys can all do the same thing. Every one of the famous people that you're looking at out there started there as well. Kelly, you can tell a little bit about your experience with that.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a book editor. I'm a behind the scenes kind of person. But when I started KN Literary, I realized that there were a lot of questions that people had that were keeping them from taking the next step on their journey. And so I started writing a newsletter, and I started writing, I wrote my book, and I created a YouTube channel. And in doing that, now I also get recognized in the strangest of places. And so I am not a famous person. I am somebody who edits other people's books. But as time goes by, you start to build that audience. The people that are interested in what it is that you have to share, they find you. And then next thing you know, they tell their friends about you. And I call it creating fans and then creating super fans. So you've got your fans. They are people who just know who you are. Your super fans are people who've engaged with you and really love what you're doing, and they tell their friends. And so that's the goal, is just to start creating a super fan here or there, and then the next one and the next one. And it's sort of, ultimately it takes on a life of its own if the material that you're teaching is something that people want to hear.
Right, and you can start sharing it. You don't need to be done with your whole book to start sharing it.
No.
You can write a blog. Mine are usually 300 words, you know. You can sit down, spend a day, write the blog, send it out, and you'll start saying, look, I'm a writer. I write the blog every day. I don't call myself a writer, but I guess I could. I write the blog every week. And now I've written hundreds and hundreds of them after all this time. So the next thing James says, teaches you about is just how to get the habit started. And so as I'm reading this book, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, all the people I help with writing can really learn from this. So he says, like, here's an example of, he calls it an implementation intention. And he says, I will write, like, here's an example, is like, I will write 30 minutes at 7 p.m. in the living room every day. So you have a specific thing that you're going to do. And then he does something which I really love, this is that he calls it habit stacking. So after I make coffee in the morning, I will write for 30 minutes every day. So you're not just saying that you're going to write in the living room 30 minutes at a time, but you're saying, I already have this habit. Every single morning I make coffee, tea, or every evening I do this, or anything that you're doing already. You're saying, I already have a current habit. Now I'm going to do this new habit that ties into the current habit. I love that. And I think that, and you can start with 5 minutes every day. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It doesn't have to be an hour. One of the other things that he says is that you want to start like at a small level and then build upon that. And then another thing that he calls it temptation bundling. So it's like, after I make coffee in the morning, I will write for 30 minutes. And after I write for 30 minutes, I'll get to eat a donut, you know? So you give yourself a reward, or I get to, you know, text with my friends, or I get to go on Instagram, whatever a reward can be for you, that when you're finished doing your writing, that you can actually get something else done as well. So I love that, because I think really what the key to being the writing is creating the habit. Like Wayne Dyer, he used to always, here's some things that he did to get started. First, he would come up with a title that he wants to write about, a concept, an idea. He would do an outline of what he wants to cover, and then he would say, okay, I'm going to take the next whatever length of time, let's say it was a year, to write this book. And so I know that the book's going to be X number of chapters based on my outline. So I'm going to spend, so it's 13 chapters. So I'm going to spend 4 weeks on every single chapter. And at the end of the year, the book will be done. And then he would say, okay, if I'm going to write it in this amount of time, I need to spend 2 hours each day writing. And then each day he would sit there and write for 2 hours. And some days he would write 1 page, and some days he would write the whole entire chapter. You just don't know. But he sat there at his writing space and did his writing every single day until it was done, and he was never late on turning in any of his books. And I think people that make it like a habit like that, something that they do every day, are much more likely to finish than people that think they're going to sit down and write it in a week. I don't know what you think about that, Kelly, but
Oh, yes, definitely. Absolutely. That is the thing that I think people, one of the things that is a big misconception is that you need to have a week at a stretch or a month in a cabin in the woods with the perfect candle and the perfect pen, and then you'll write your book. And the problem is that wherever we go, there we are. And so the issues that are keeping you from writing a half hour a day are going to be there when you're on that retreat where you're supposed to be writing. So these habits that Reed just brought up, I think, are excellent. And in fact, we're giving you all something to get you started. So it actually goes back to one of the habits that Reed talked about, which is the implementation. You're making yourself a commitment. And so tonight, keep your eye on your inbox. You're going to be getting an email from Hay House, and it's going to contain my pledge, my writer's pledge. And it is the place where you officially identify as the writer and you make an agreement with yourself to get this book done. So I encourage you all to print it out, sign it, and put it somewhere where you see it regularly, because that will also help you to remember the agreement you've made to yourself and why, what it is in your heart that's calling you to write the book, because you wouldn't be here if there wasn't something important.
that's awesome. I love it. So everyone needs to look for their email, print it out, and sign it. I love it.
Yep.
One of the things James says, the 4 laws of habits, is make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So those are some to think about when you're creating your writing habit. And then I'm going to end the webinar here with this story that he had, which I think is such a good story for everyone, just showing something else. So there's a college professor of photography divided his class in 2. Half the students got graded based on the quantity of pictures they took, and the other half got graded on the quality. So half of the students during the semester only had to turn in 1 photo. They turned in their best photo, and half the students turned in a whole bunch of photos, and then he would determine which one is good, out of those. At the end of the semester, all the best photos were taken in the class by the quantity group, not the quality group. So he did this whole experiment just to see, like, if you spend all your time to make one, or if you take a whole bunch, which one is going to be better. And the quantity group took chances and tried new things, and the quality group stuck to what was proven to work. And I think it's just a proof to all of you is that sitting down, writing, and doing it, the more you write, the more you do, the more that you put effort into doing it instead of doing it perfectly, you can always get help. There's plenty of editors like Kelly and all the people that work for her that can help you make it into a better book. But until you sit down and get the quantity down, the quality doesn't matter. I know our editors are happy to get a few extra words and cut them than to have to go back to the author and say, well, there's really not enough here. We need to get more. So I don't know if you agree with that, but I thought that was such a good advice for people, is just quantity is way better than quality at the beginning.
Absolutely. And I will say, to just piggyback onto that, one of the things that I like to tell people is absolutely have a moratorium on editing anything until you have a first draft. So that means you don't go back and reread what you wrote yesterday, because unfortunately what you'll end up doing is polishing that one perfect photo that Reed was just talking about, rather than actually getting words on the page for the next section that needs to come in that chapter. It's one of my favorite phrases in publishing. Anne Lamott talks about the shitty first draft, which is the draft that you write. You just get it all down onto the page. You don't need it to be anything but kind of bad at the beginning. You just need to have it on the page. It's more important. So definitely go for the quantity, getting new material down every day, no matter what you need to get started, whether it's a writing prompt or a friend to ask you a question that you're going to write about, or your outline, if I have my way, that you can pick a section or a story to start with. Just get a new piece of content down every time you sit down at the beginning.
Yep, and just create that great writing habit. And James Clear in his book also had a quote from Ernest Hemingway, and he said, "The best way to write is always stop when it's going good." So you don't want to have it be a struggle. So as it's going incredibly good, you can just stop and say, "I had an amazing day." And so I thought that was a really, really good way that we can end this webinar here today, is just get started, get the habit of writing, find your audience that you're trying to reach, and then just keep going. Don't stop. So many people stop before they get to the end, or they don't create that writing habit so that they even get started, really. Honestly, I think most people don't get started, then stop in the middle. And so we want you to really get started on your writing adventure and really get your work out there for people to share. And I don't know if you have an ending thing you want to say, Kelly, but
Absolutely. I feel, again, just congratulations for being here. This is the starting block. You got here. Keep going. Writing prompts are a great way. You can Google writing prompts. We've got some on our blog at KN Literary, but you can also find them just about anywhere on the web. That can be a really good way to start. Set your timer for 7 minutes. Do a writing prompt. Why not do one tonight? Unless you're one of the folks that it's 2 o'clock in the morning.
Now it's 3.
It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Use this time, really use the momentum that you've created by being here on this webinar or watching it at a later date to get some writing down on the page. You will feel like a writer once you do.
Exactly. And thank you guys all for coming. Those of you who are watching live, thank you for coming and spending this time with us. Thank you to everyone who's going to be watching it later. And then a reminder that on next Monday, I'm going to start How to Be a Successful Author Masterclass, which is 4 more parts. And I'm going to go into more depth in all the writing process. I'm going to get a little help from a whole bunch of Hay House authors, best-selling, well-known authors that you guys will all know, that are going to help share some tips for you as well. So I look forward to seeing you on Monday. And thank you, Kelly. You were awesome, as always.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks, everyone.
That was great. Awesome.